Hey, it's Nick again for Grayscale Gorilla. I am the Gorilla. I'm pumped today because I'm starting up the CS Tools series again. It's been quite a while since I did one of these tutorials. If you're not familiar with the CS Tools, they are basically a plugin set for Cinema 4D, a free plugin set that was made by Chris Smith, which is the CS and CS Tools. I have maybe 7 or 8 of these tutorials. Basically, I'm going through all of the plugins one by one in order and trying to just put a little tutorial together on how to use them and what all the kind of buttons mean. So if you haven't seen the other ones, go back, check them out. Also, if you need help installing the CS Tools, check out some of the other videos. I'll link them up. In Cinema 11 and later, it's a little more difficult to install in kind of a clean way. So anyway, follow those tutorials. If it's all in, ready to go, let's head on into Cinema and talk about, today we're talking about the Daylight plugin, the Daylight 2 plugin in particular. So let's head on in. So here's our scene. I have this little cube thing I got from Tim Clapham. It's his site is hypa.tv. He's got a bunch of actually really cool lighting examples that uses this, and it's just a kind of a cool little shape to try out different lighting scenarios with. So I decided to kind of use it here. So there it is. I have a floor that has a little bit of a reflection, a little blurry reflection on it, and we need to light the scene. So in the CS Tools kind of drop down I have here, and again, to get this, I have a tutorial for version 11 and later. So here we are. I'm going to pick Daylight 2. Now, if you've seen the Daylight 1, in fact, let's start with Daylight 1. I'm going to shut off, I'm going to just delete the first one here. So here's the original Daylight. Let's render it and see what happens. All right, so it looks pretty good. There's what it is. It has kind of a fill light here, kind of a blue sky fill light, a key light coming this way, and then this really harsh sunlight as the key. So really it should maybe face something like this. We'll back it up and we'll render again, and we see we have a pretty nice looking lighting kind of technique here. The issue is the shadows are really hard, and depending on what time of day it is and stuff, these shadows may be a little softer, and sometimes actually you need a little bit more of a natural light. So I think that's why Chris made the Daylight 2, which I'm going to apply right now. And just by default, you'll see what we get is a lot softer shadow from here. And that's because Daylight 2 is using an area light for this rim light instead of a normal hard shadowed light. So you know, you can see it's a little more natural, but there are some issues. It's pretty grainy down here, let me show you how to kind of fix that. If you haven't seen the original Daylight CS Tools tutorial, head back and watch that one because that'll go through all of these settings. Quickly, I'll just say you could pan out and see that this rig is a little small for our scene. You kind of want to emulate, you know, maybe you kind of need it to be a little larger than the scene. So I'm going to just blow it up. You're going to see we're going to separate our lights a little bit more, and we're going to get a little bit more of a realistic render here. That's looking better. But we still have these this kind of graininess, and let's talk about how we can get rid of that. The main thing is the area shadow, the area light that is casting this needs to be turned up in settings. So I wish there were some settings here that would allow me to adjust the area light, but all I have is basically I can turn it off. I can go back to the basic, here's the original Daylight settings, which is the hard shadows. We also have soft shadows, which does a pretty good job, but still not as realistic as the area shadows, which is what we really want to use. Like I say, I wish there were some settings to adjust this, but actually what we need to do is open up the Daylight package here open up the null, and you'll see everything that this plugin is made with. Right here, you're going to see the only light that has a shadow attached to it, and that's this rim fill light. If we go into here, you're going to have a bunch of options over here. One of them is shadow. Now, the main thing we're concerned with are these three here at the bottom: accuracy, minimum samples, and maximum samples. And basically what you want to do is turn these up. Sometimes you can leave accuracy kind of where it is. 75, 80 is a good way to be, but usually you just have to raise the sample. So I'm actually just going to double everything. I'm going to go to 120 and 200. And we're going to render the same scene here. You're going to see the grain is cleaning up a little bit. We actually probably need a little bit more, so I'm going to go to 200 and 300. Be careful with turning it up too high, as the render times get a little out of control. Actually, that's looking pretty good to me. A little grainy, but not as bad as it was. So let's check this from different angles. That looks like a nice light there. Really soft, kind of daylight, kind of golden hour shadow here. It's a little soft for true daylight. If you really want to emulate daylight, I think it's a little closer to the original daylight, which is the hard shadows. And you'll get really hard shadows. But again, you're not getting that kind of natural fall off that I think works really well for product shots, things like that. So let's go back. So that, like I say, is the main change for Daylight 2. If you want to know more about these quickly, you could rotate the whole rig around. The azimuth is the height of the key, or of the rim. It's basically the height of the sun in the daylight. So we could raise that up. You can see it's a lot brighter on top. We have a shorter shadow. The rest of these I go over in the daylight tutorial. In the original daylight tutorial, you can play with the brightness and the relative brightness of each of the lights. You have the rim light, which is the sun, the sky fill, which is like a blue fill, and the key level, which is the front light. So you could adjust these around and come up with some pretty good lighting rigs. So like I say, if you want to know more about this, check out the original daylight. And the one last thing I wanted to show you, I set up a kind of a more complicated scene here. I just wanted to give you a heads up when there's a lot more geometry in the scene. You know, that was kind of a basic scene back there, but when there's more to render, I just want you to check out, once we get the settings in a good way, actually how long this could take to render. It does produce some really cool lighting rig really quickly, but it does take a little bit longer to render. So you can see we still have just a little bit of grain, but that's a pretty good looking light setup with just a few adjustments of the Daylight 2. So that's it. That's it for Daylight 2. Pretty quick one, but like I say, it's kind of redundant based on the original Daylight, so check that one out. I'll be catching up on these. I'll be doing these more often, in fact. I know I took kind of a break there, but I'll make sure to finish them off. Yeah, that's about it for this one. If you have any questions about CS tools or anything, drop me an email as always, leave a comment. And if you use the CS tools or the Daylight in particular, drop me a scene or a little screen capture, and let's show each other how we're using these cool little tools here. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you at the next one. Bye, everyone.